Let's see if we can make a video out of this. Why don't we? Teeth check. They're all in there. All right. Hey friends, it's just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and welcome to another episode of Gems. That's right, it's Gems, the series where I just kind of gab at you about what's on my mind as it relates to the Japanese role-playing game community that we are all a part of. And I thank you for taking the time to come by and hear the rants of a barely coherent 40-year-old man. I realize looking in the monitor here that this is just like the goriest looking thing on my nose. This is what happens when you are sunburned and still insist on using breathe right strips. So don't do that. That's a piece of advice. It's really gross. I feel I'm just gonna cover it. Here. There we go. There. So I'm just gonna, yeah, that's better, right? That's better. Nah, I can't do it. I'm gonna keep it off. Whatever. Just, avert your eyes.
Editor Brandon here. Upon reviewing the footage, I'm disgusted enough by that nose monstrosity that we're going to go ahead and shrink the video down, and we're going to put some fun gameplay footage instead of that glaring, gory looking nasty mess on my face. Thank you. Enjoy.
Anyway, the topic for discussion today is one that has been in the back of my mind for literally years now. I've had pretty strong opinions on this subject going back 3 console generations at this point, because I think that's kind of around when the time this started to become a thing. In case you didn't read the title and you haven't looked at it 2 inches down below the screen, what I'm talking about is romanceable NPCs or romanceable characters in general, and how, in my opinion, they're ruining JRPG storytelling. What do I mean by that? Well, it's not too complicated, I don't think. Essentially, when you look at some of the great JRPG storylines throughout history, many of them involve some sort of romance element to it, whether it's the Chrono and Marl romance in Chrono Trigger, or, Locke and Celeste in Final Fantasy VI, Cloud and, I guess Tifa Aerith love triangle 7, Squall and Renoa. There's so many examples, and I know I'm just picking from the Square Enix catalog, but they're classics for a reason. Here's my issue. When it comes to games that offer you a great amount of choice in how you handle the main character's romantic relationships, and I'm thinking in particular of games in the Persona series, obviously. I feel like that's kind of the biggest one, right, in gaming today, in modern gaming, where having the ability to choose who you socialize with and then eventually who you are in a quote-unquote romantic relationship with. Persona's really kind of the biggest series that does this. But more and more, it's just becoming a thing in so many JRPGs. JRPGs that honestly probably would do better, in my opinion, without it. Like, take, for example, my favorite series of all time, which is the Trails series, okay? Trails is magnificent. Its ability to tell a story over the last 20 years and just have this continuity going in these characters and this just deep story that's running in the background of it all. It's just mind-blowing to me. And one great element of the early games in the Trails series, specifically the Sky trilogy, right, is the relationship that develops between Estelle, the main character, and Joshua, which is a little weird, kind of squicked me out at first because he was sort of her brother. They share a last name. He was adopted when he was like, I don't know if they were like 5, I forget exactly. So it's not like, they're the same age. It's not as weird as some other examples out there, but it's a little strange. But regardless, he's not her brother, and they fall in love, and it's a moving and well-told romantic subplot that runs through the Trails in the Sky games, and it's great. It adds so many layers and dimensions to the characters both, and it informs the story and just gives us something as players, as experiencers of the story, something to root for, right? When you move into the subsequent arcs of the Trails series, Trails from Zero, and then on into Trails of Cold Steel, things get a little bit different. Falcom took a step back and said, well, what if instead of establishing this character relationship, these romantic relationships, we offer the player choice in who the main character, Lloyd in Zero and Reen in Cold Steel, who they end up with or who they are romantic with or whatever. On the surface, that sounds good, right? Player choice in a story that you, the player, are driving seems like it would be a no-brainer. But for me, it doesn't work because of the negative impact it has on the story. And I'm going to go into a few reasons why I feel like that negatively impacts the story, if you don't mind. Instead of allowing these romantic subplots to develop organically throughout the course of the entire story, or like in the case of, say, Cold Steel 4, right, where you've got just this super long story, we're talking 300 to 400 hours if you're taking your time going through these 4 games. Instead of allowing this romantic subplot to develop organically over that time, instead, you take part in what are essentially not even mini games. It's not like they're not challenging you in any particular way. You just kind of decide who to spend your limited time with. And through that decision, you sort of unlock the path to reach the ending for a particular character. And you can choose one character by the end who you are, you know, I don't even want to say dating because that's not even exactly what it is, but it's like, that's your special person or whatever. Okay. What that really amounts to in practice, and this goes for, it obviously beyond even just the Trail series, it also applies to Persona and so many other series nowadays, where what you actually get are 6 to 10 scenes, optional scenes of just the 2 characters bonding in some way. I mean, typically just the 2 characters bonding in some way. And that's kind of it. Right? Because the player has choice in who they're romancing. It's impossible currently for the development team to tailor make the rest of the story around that choice. The rest of the game, the rest of the story doesn't necessarily know who you're choosing, who you're romancing at that moment. Plus, I mean, if you are playing a game for the first time, you're not sure which character you prefer the main character to end up with. Maybe you're seeing multiple character scenes. You're not dedicating your time to advancing a relationship with a particular character. So the game has no idea what it is you're doing. And rarely, if ever, does it factor those decisions that you make from a gameplay perspective into the story. One thing I will say is that I feel like Trails does a better job of integrating it into the main story than Persona does. Trails, I mean, the attention to detail in the writing for Trails is crazy. If you speak to certain NPCs before you do certain things, the dialogue will change to fit your experience with the game. So Trails admittedly does a better job of tying it together, but it's still very minimal when you compare it to the relationship buildup that happened in Trails in the Sky. And Persona, it's not even a contest. Like, it's a completely separate reality that these stories are happening in almost. You've got the reality where you are a group of teenagers fighting shadows, using your personas to save the world. And you have the reality where you are courting, dating, whatever. You're pursuing the character of your choice. Because that's just kind of what the game expects that you are going to want to do. And to me, that separation is extremely unrealistic. I remember playing Persona 5, not Royal, just 5, when I was playing it for the first time. And I had achieved a level of relationship with Makoto where it was like the max, we were dating or, whatever. The characters were dating each other. And in subsequent scenes, the characters were sitting around in the cafe talking about what they were going to do, and the main character and Makoto were sitting nowhere near each other. And I know it's a small thing, but to me, that just felt strange. It felt incorrect. It felt unreal. Because if these two teenagers are dating each other, they're going to be spending every second that they can being close to each other. It's just like the way relationships are, you know? If you are sitting down together with a group, you're still most likely going to be sitting next to your significant other. And the fact that the development team didn't take that into account, that, oh, we should maybe shuffle the positioning, even just shuffling the positioning of the characters would show that some effort is being made to make this relationship feel like it's a part of the same story, that it's integrated with the story. And to me, that's the key. That's the thing that's missing. When you have the ability to choose a romanceable character, you are basically giving up any sort of sense of realism that relationship would have being, a part of the main story, the story that you are taking part in. It also creates a situation that's a little bit strange with games that have subsequent sequels, where there can never be any true canon romance, because who knows who you chose, right? Like, who knows which character you decided to romance? I mean, you can, I guess, work around it a little bit. I know Trails does it to an extent with carrying over your save data from the previous entry into the new one, and they can trigger a flag that says, oh, this, the main character is in a relationship with this character, and they can make reference to it again. But really, that's just kind of prolonging the problem. It's just carrying the same problem over into the next game. So maybe your 6 to 10 optional scenes come about or are carried out in a slightly different way, but you're not like, it doesn't change the story. It doesn't drastically change the story. And then if you're in a situation where maybe you move forward a console generation and you're not able to transfer your save file, what is the next game in the series supposed to do? What, do they give you a list like, who did the main character choose to be their significant other in the previous game? It's like, that's, I don't know. That's just, that feels fake. It feels superficial to me to do it that way. Like, we know that Estelle and Joshua, couple, right? They love each other. They love each other so much. And that's wonderful. And that's a part of the canon of the Trails series. No other character, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't played the new games. Please don't spoil anything from Daybreak or Crimson Sin or whatever. I only play the games in English. I'm not playing no fan subtitled stuff. That ain't for me. That ain't for me. I'm an NIS America translation localization boy. That's what I do. But anyway, I don't know if they establish a canon relationship for any of the main characters from Cold Steel or Zero and Azure. Maybe they do, but I'm guessing they probably don't, because they don't want to step on the toes of the players who invested time and emotional energy in pursuing these quote-unquote relationships. It's also, and this isn't as big of a thing, and I don't want to come across as like I don't mean this in a prudish sense, but it feels strange to me a little bit to gamify romance. You know what I mean? Like, especially in Persona, where you are developing a relationship with a character and you have to choose, as you have these little scenes with them, you have to choose different options that give you more affection points or whatever for the character that you're seeing. Not only are those choices that they give you so kind of nonsensical, like they don't always make sense as to what, why a character gives you more affection points for this response compared to that response, like they both seem fine. But it's just a strange thing to take a character and kind of put her in a box and say, if you play the game properly, you get this girl, right? You get this character, and she can be your girlfriend. And you get like one scene near the end of the game on Valentine's Day where there's like implied hanky-panky. And hey, implied hanky-panky is great. I would never take implied hanky-panky away from anybody. It's fantastic. I love it. Imply it all day. But it's like, I don't know. It's a strange thing to me to make that part of the game. Like, the game, to me, when I'm playing a role-playing game, when I'm playing a JRPG, the game part is like the battles, maybe it's solving a puzzle, but it's not my relationship with the characters. That, to me, is the story. That is the realm of the story and the characters. Now, I'm saying this like it's some sort of, rule handed down from on high. It's not. It's just my preference, right? Maybe you love the idea of having the character, be the reward for performing the tasks in the game properly. That's fine. I'm not saying that it's wrong. And like I said, I don't even want to sound like prudish about it. It's not like some sort of moral, ethical thing. It's just like, it just feels weird to me. Like it's not something I'm into. So that's why I just don't prefer it. So it's not a rule. It's not a decree from on high that they shouldn't do this, that it's bad. I just don't care for it. So I was thinking about like, what would I do to change this for games in the future? Like, I don't think that the romanceable character thing is going anywhere. I believe there's enough people out there that do enjoy it, that it's going to be a part of at least some JRPG series going forward forever. I mean, especially Persona. I don't know, like I said, I don't know about Trails. I don't know if that continues on past the Erebonia arc. But I have a feeling that it's going to carry on in at least some way in some games for forever. So what could make it better? What would solve the problem for me? The only thing, I don't know if it's the only thing. I haven't, the first thing that comes to mind for me is this seems like a great way to introduce artificial intelligence into the process of creating scenes. Now, before you get your pitchforks, I understand AI is a very contentious issue right now. People get very upset about it for different reasons. Some people see it as replacing people, taking away jobs, stealing from artists. That's bad. I mean, all of that stuff is bad, and people shouldn't use technological tools to do that sort of thing to people. That's bad, I think, full stop. But I think that there is a place for artificial intelligence in video games where you want to give the player essentially limitless choice, okay? So let's say I'm playing a Persona game, and I have the main character pursue a relationship with his classmate, or God forbid they make the characters in Persona adults, co-worker. Who knows? In the future. It could be. Who knows? So he's pursuing this relationship with this character, and the game is aware that I am showing interest, that the protagonist that I'm controlling is showing this interest in this character. And so the script that is kind of running the game makes some changes to scenes as the story goes along and says, okay, well, we have this character appears to be moving towards a relationship with the main character. Let's center them together more frequently. Let's throw in some additional lines of dialogue that will show that these two have a deeper connection than the main character might have with any of the other characters in the room. Let's find ways of making that happen. And that, to me, is a useful use for artificial intelligence, because it does something that a human can't do for every player for a game. Like if you're going to give me essentially limitless or near limitless choice in a game, there needs to be something to, provide the output that I'm expecting to see from those choices that I make. And a video game like a Persona or whatever, maybe you don't need a full artificial intelligent backing to create that story, but it would be, I think, a massive amount of work and coding to ensure that that all happens the way that it's supposed to. So my thinking is the writers are still writing. The writers are still creating the whole story, 99% of the dialogue. But if we have this tool in place to adjust scenes to give us, a more realistic scene based on the choices that I've made as the player, then maybe I don't feel like this romance subplot that I'm carrying off in the background has no bearing on the main story. Maybe that's the way we smooth over the rough edges of this sort of peripheral story that's happening, this romantic subplot. And just to be clear, you know, I have nothing against these games that have these romanceable characters. Like, some of my favorite games are these games. I already mentioned Trails is my favorite series of all time. Persona, the Persona series is just amazing. 3, 4, and 5, at least. I can't speak for 1 and 2 really, but 3, 4, and 5 are just amazing masterpieces of games. Harvestella, one of my all-time favorite games, period, has this exact same thing that I'm talking about here. So it's not like I'm put off by this and it makes me not want to play these particular games. It's just from my perspective as somebody for whom story is the key and characters are the absolute key. It takes away from the experience in some small but significant ways, and it makes me just long for the days when this wasn't a thing and the writers were giving us the story that they had in mind. You know, it's kind of like in Trails of Cold Steel, you know, President Kondo has said in interviews and stuff that he thinks Elisa makes the most sense to be with Reen. And you kind of see in some actual scenes in the game that the developers are kind of thinking the same thing, that they're kind of pushing you in that direction. But again, it kind of creates this weird disparity where if you are pursuing Fee or Laura or Emma or any of these other characters, you still have these scenes where it seems like Reen is being pushed towards Elisa, because it would just be a crazy amount of work to reorganize and reconfigure all of these scenes to make it specific to whichever character has the most, you know, love points with your main character. It would just be not feasible to do right now. So that's kind of what I mean. It's like, if we didn't have this kind of romantic subplot thing, this romantic subplot minigame situation, we could just focus on the story that the writers want to tell in the first place, right? Just they let them tell the story they want to tell, instead of, you know, forcing them to take a step back and maybe not give us everything they want to because we want to allow for the players to choose. I don't know. What do you think? This has just been something that's been on my mind, like I said, for a long time. It's something I think about continuously, and especially as I've been replaying through all the Trails games in anticipation of Daybreak coming out in the beginning of July. I don't know. I'm very interested in hearing what people think of it. I have to imagine, I'm guessing that I'm probably in the minority. I have a feeling that most people are gonna say that they enjoy having the romanceable characters and having the choice. But if you feel the same way I do, I would love to hear why. I'd love to hear the reasons why. And same, if you disagree with me, I'd love to hear why you prefer having the romanceable characters. Because like I said, this isn't something that makes or breaks a game for me by any means. So many of my favorite games do this very thing, and I still love them to death. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. If you wouldn't mind liking the video or disliking it if you hate my stupid broken nose, that's fine. But if you wouldn't mind, that helps me so much. And also, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, if you are not currently subscribed, we talk about JRPGs around here, and we have a good time doing it. So anyway, in the meantime, hope you're all having a great week, and until next time, bye.